At the dawn of the 21st century, Pitcher, Oklahoma was arguably the unluckiest town in America. For decades, its population had steadily declined, and not just because of the lack of jobs there. Pitcher's infant mortality rate was unusually high. The town was pockmarked with sinkholes, and the people of Pitcher, young and old alike, seemed uniquely prone to serious illness, heart disease, lung disease, cancer, and many other ailments. Every town nearby had suffered since the demise of the mining industry there, but Pitcher seemed particularly cursed. The town's curse had once been its lifeblood. Pitcher sits in the far northeastern corner of Oklahoma, at the edge of the Ozark Plateau, near the triple border with Kansas and Missouri, in an area known as the Tri-State region. While the region might strike contemporary travelers as desolate, a century ago it boasted an immense commercial advantage: vast mineral deposits buried deep underground. In the 1920s, the Tri-State region mined more zinc and lead than anywhere else in the world, at a time when those minerals were critical to the production of paint, pipes, brass, housewares, armaments, and many other important goods. The miners of Pitcher had a nickname for the zinc and lead that abounded there: King Jack. For decades, Jack was a generous monarch. The tri-state lead and zinc mines paid high wages, allowing the miners to build relative wealth while the surrounding region flourished. There is probably no town in the world that has changed so much in the last year or two as Pitcher, a local newspaper boasted in 1920. New structures were rising every day: shops, cinemas, a bowling alley, and increasingly, the mounds of accumulated mining detritus known as chat piles. A miner's output went directly to a mill where pressure was applied to extract the valuable metals from the surrounding ore. The remaining ore and rock were reduced to a particulate substance known as mine tailings, or chat. In Pitcher, those tailings were dumped in heaping piles on the outskirts of town. These chat piles soon overshadowed any of the man-made structures in Pitcher, with some rising as high as 200 feet. When the wind blew, it carried a fine mist of pulverized ore and silica dust that drifted through people's lives and lungs. The boom didn't last. It never does, and the work dried up as the mineral deposits dwindled. By the 1960s, the Pitcher mines had been picked clean, leaving behind a declining population of unemployed laborers, mine widows, and the mountainous chat piles whose presence evoked better days. As time passed, doctors noticed an alarming rate of other ailments among those who remained in and around Pitcher: blood diseases and cognitive impairments, and various types of cancer. In his 1940 film Men in Dust, the photographer Sheldon Dick had depicted the high incidence of debilitating illness among the region's residents: silicosis, tuberculosis, malnutrition, general diseases. In the meantime, they sicken. In the meantime, they die. The narrator intones as the camera lingers on a shot of a makeshift graveyard. "Give us health, give us work, give us life," he says at the end of the brief documentary, his voice soon rising to a plaintive cry: "Give us health, give us work, give us life." But the people of Pitcher would get none of those things. More than half a century after Dick's documentary, studies showed that locals contracted the lung disease pneumoconiosis at a rate 2,000% higher than the national average. In the 1990s, another study showed that 38.3% of the children in Pitcher had elevated blood lead levels, compared with 2% of children in the rest of the state. The key to these diagnoses was readily apparent. You could find it among the dead fish in the local creek, which had grown toxic as soon as the abandoned mines filled up with groundwater. In the swimming holes where children would play on hot summer days, sometimes to emerge with their hair turned orange from the acidic waters. And yes, in the massive chat piles, which had carried metallic dust and trace amounts of lead into locals' bloodstreams for decades. In the early 1980s, the Environmental Protection Agency proclaimed the region one of the most contaminated areas in the United States. By the 2000s, Pitcher and its environs were so toxic that state and federal agencies offered cash buyouts to encourage its few remaining residents to leave. Today, Pitcher is a bona fide ghost town, its once lively streets empty, except for rotting buildings and the dust blowing off the chat piles. Lead and zinc put Pitcher, Oklahoma on the map. 100 years later, they have erased it from the face of the earth. At the dawn